Hi, you guys. Welcome back. My name is Carrie Penny. I am the Happy Crafty Homemaker, and today I'm going to be answering questions I get a lot on here, and some of these make me uncomfortable to answer. Not they're personal or anything, but in talking about some of these things, I sound like a know-it-all, and I don't mean it to sound that way. But these are very frequent questions, or answers to very frequent questions that I get, and in no way, shape, or form am I trying to make it sound like my way is the best way, or I know how you should do you better. But it's time to address some of these questions. After 2 years of being on YouTube, I have noticed certain questions come up very regularly. Sometimes I have addressed these inside of other videos. I do try to address these in the comment section or by email and PM when they come in. But because these keep coming up, I thought maybe it was time that we had to sit down and a chit chat about my crafting life. This is my crafty life and how I prefer to do things, not rules for how to do things. There are moments where this will probably sound like I'm being very smug, and I'm going to try to control that as much as possible, but I do have a lot of years of experience in crafting. I do have a lot of years of experience at being a homemaker and budgeting and scheduling time, not just money. So I do want to share. Generally, these are things that I share on a one-on-one basis, though, or if somebody asks me a question, I share one-on-one, not so if I come off as being smug or a know-it-all, please understand that's not my intent whatsoever. I am addressing repeat questions, though, that I get a lot. And I know a lot of other creators have a lot of similar kinds of things that they have coming up a lot in their thing. So part of this is going to be makey life stuff, and some of this is going to be crafty stuff. And there's a lot of overlap in the middle between these things, some of them. So my first tip is if you're doing anything with a whole lot of changes in yarns, colors, things like that, weave in your ends as you go as long as you can. There's nothing worse than finishing, a huge graph gan or like my scrappy granny square project that I've been working on recently and finding yourself with 950 million ends to weave in. Now, there are caveats to that even for me. As I've been working on this sweater, my knit Geldy sweater, the sweater that I just sneak peeked in my show and tell on Thursday, I did not weave in ends as I go on these. There is a chance I'm going to have to frog back. And because this one and this other crochet sweater, I am doing 2 measurements of my body and fit of how I want them to fit as I go. So like this sweater, I did the from here down. This is where the stitch pattern changed to break for the sleeves. I altered the cabana top sweater from Sorella for this to fit me. From here down, I was able to weave in my ends once I finished that section. Once I did this section and knew that this was going to fit properly, that's when I wove in the ends on this section. They were multiple ball ends as I was weaving in. Some were knots I had to cut out that I had to weave in as I went. But I did it in sections where I knew, okay, this is perfect. I won't have to frog back at this point. But things like, I learned this trick. It's not even a trick. I learned to do this and started training myself to do this after my Doctor Who scarf. I had done many scrap projects leading up to that, but the ends on that Doctor Who scarf were intense. There's a lot of color changes, and some are after very tiny colors. So for that one, every 10 colors I wove in my ends. It just gave me a very uniform place to stop, put my needles down, weave in my ends real quick. I have shared this with other people making the Doctor Who scarf. Judy from Witch Piece Crafts actually gave me a shout out and was like, thank you for that, because this would have been a bear to do at the end. You do you, and you figure out where that point is for you in your project, but I highly recommend in a project where you have a lot of ends to weave those in as you go in batches and groups. It doesn't have to be every ball change or every color change even, but it also, if you're a knitter, not a crocheter, when you change your colors in knitting, you tend to get the loopy bits on the sides. Weaving in as you go, the weight of the project will not pull that end loose. There are a lot of ways to do it. Knitting as you go, knitting your end in as you go. Same thing with crocheting your end in as you go. Take advantage of those if you can for your project. If not, put the hook, put the needle down, and just weave in the ends in sections and batches. For like my granny squares, every time I finish a scrap ball, I weave in the ends. And every piece that I finish at that point in that color has its ends woven in. So when it comes to joining them, all I have left are the 2 black yarns for my joint. That's it. That's all I have to weave in for each row. It is a time-saving measure, and it is a sanity-saving measure. And I know it's a pain. I know it's frustrating. Nobody wants to do that unless you're that freak that likes finishing work. I kid. But there are people who like weaving in ends. I mean, but by and large, it is difficult to make yourself do it. I've had projects that stayed UFOs unfinished for H's because I didn't want to weave in the ends. It was just too much work to do the finishing work. So I do really recommend straight out of the gate, weave in your ends as you go. This next one is a weird one. I understand that for a long time, a lot of people would tell you you can't mix yarn fibers and yarn types. I would argue categorically and emphatically that that is a load of poop. You can mix fiber types. You can mix fiber styles as much as you want. Look at what Carrie at Urban Yarn does. We all, when he sent me that beautiful birthday gift, we all agreed in the comment section down below at how fantastic his eye for color and texture are. He does a lot of fiber blending. And if you look at people who make artwork, not clothing, not garments, not home decor items, literal artwork, these people who use fiber to paint with, almost all of them are mixing fiber types, fiber sizes and fiber types. The whole freeform crochet movement, they're constantly mixing fiber types. The only thing you have to be aware of when you mix fiber types, and I'm talking, you know, a non-superwash wool, an acrylic, a metallic, when you start throwing all those into a project together, the project care is whatever your most delicate fiber is. So you might blend a wool into a 70% acrylic project. It now has to be cared for like that non-superwash wool. Soak it, wash it, hand press it, don't wring it, and air dry it. Because you will felt the wool that's in that project. Sorry, my legs are a little sore today. I overdid it on my walk this morning, and well, I didn't overdo it. I did my full 5 miles, and I'm a little sore. I did a lot of hills today. I understand though where people get this misimpression that you can't mix fiber types, because it's been preached to us since our grandmothers were working with Red Heart. But it's a lie. It's a misnomer. It's not true. It just changes how you have to care for your final object at that point. There's nothing wrong with mixing fiber types. You can blend cotton and wool. And there are cotton wool blend yarns out there. Clearly, if you can manufacture a blended fiber, you can blend your own fiber content for a finished object. It just becomes the care of the most delicate fiber in it. And you see that with like a nylon wool blend, a non-superwash wool blend. You can wash and dry in your machine nylon. Nylon is machine washable, machine dryable. Once you add that non-superwash wool to it, it is now hand wash, air dry. Superwash wool is machine washable on delicate and low temperatures just to preserve the agitation of the fibers. There's nothing wrong with that. And this has come up quite a few times since Kalisha released the Just Feel Festive shawl. Because in her shawl, she uses 2 strands held together of the fingering weight yarns. There are a lot more non-wool fingering weight yarns out on the market. Somebody just released a cotton blend, and I'm dying to get my fingers on that to see how that feels to me. It's got an elastic, cotton, and nylon blend. I really want to know more about that. But, you know, Wool-like is 100% acrylic, and people were wondering if they could blend Wool-like and Peyton's Croy, because Peyton's Croy is wool. Of course you can. You just now care for it based on the most delicate care instructions of the most delicate fiber you add in. Nothing wrong with that. Like I said, I get it. It's the same thing with my frustration with you can't block acrylic. You most certainly can block acrylic. You have to be careful. You steam it to set the shape instead of letting it air dry to set the shape. Wet blocking acrylic kind of works temporarily. Now, acrylic blends, you can wet block more easily, even if it's like Woolies, Land Brand Woolies is 25-75. It's 25% wool, 75% acrylic. You can wet block that. The wool is enough to wet block it. You will have to reblock it every time you wash it though. But if you're not drying an acrylic finished object, you can steam it and it's permanently set, that blocking. When you put it into the dryer, you are applying steam to it once again. But you can block acrylic. I've never been quite sure why the impression was you can't. But there you have it. This is one of those zones where we're getting into territory. The question frequently is some variation of how do you make as many things as you do? A lot of my finished objects are small objects, hats, scarves, shawls, dishcloths. I do a lot of very small projects and I can crank those out continuously and constantly. I do have a little bit slower of a time, obviously with blankets, sweaters, things like that. The reason why I'm able to produce so many tiny objects though, smaller projects, I constantly have one with me. You can't work on something if it's not with you. If I'm going to be outside of my home, I have a dishcloth. Becky from Funny Farm Crochet has mentioned this a lot, where she gets trapped in her delivery truck and she always has a dishcloth with her to work on while she sits there and waits. I don't sit still for long very well, so I always have a project with me. Every time I get in the car, just about, I have a project with me, whether it be granny squares, granny hexagons, dishcloths, hats, sometimes scarves, simple patterns, simple projects. I always take those on the go with me. I have a project by the sofa, I have a project by the bed, I have a project by the computer. Most of them are based on the complexity. Like the more difficult things I tend to do at the computer, because I have a more structured place to set out my patterns and supplies and things like that. At the sofa, I might have something I need the pattern for it, but really the work is fairly easy. In the bed, it's still more, dishcloth kind of projects. But that's why I'm able to make as many small projects as I do. Is stuck in a traffic jam and traffic's at a dead stop, I will put a row in a dishcloth. Went to go get my car cleaned, sat there with a bag and made a dishcloth. Went to get an oil change, go to the doctor's office, gonna meet my husband for lunch. I know I'm gonna be early. He's gonna be on time to late. I always have a project with me. If Troy is driving the car somewhere on the weekends, we drove up to Hickory one Saturday. I took a project with me. I literally always have something with me. And it's always those small projects. They're portable. They're easy to throw together. I just keep them with me. I can't remember which channel it is, but she was talking about her socks. She's an avid sock knitter. She keeps a pair of socks in her car, and she just has a bag with socks started in her glove box. So if for any reason she has forgotten any other project, she always has that sock project. And when she gets to the heel turn, she switches out the project bag, puts a new one in there, and takes those inside to finish them. Once the heels are done, she can rotate it back to the car to work on the cuffs. That's how you produce. If you want to be a production knitter or production crocheter, you want to see an increase to things like these small projects, that's how you do it. If you work outside of the house, your 30-minute lunch break, you spend 10 minutes eating, you might check your email for another 5 minutes. What do you do with the next 15 minutes? Have a project. Every moment I'm sitting and not actively engaged in something, generally I have something in my hands. Editing videos. I've even, when it's taking a long time to get food at a restaurant, pulled out a project bag and started working on something. I just am almost never without a project. That is actually how I produce so many small items, is those 5-minute blurbs in your day. When you start making those productive moments to unwind, because to me, it's also unwinding and relaxing, you will find yourself finishing more objects or getting closer to finish on more objects. Taking that same thought of always having a project at hand and filling those 5 minutes with relaxation time. I housekeep and clean on a schedule. And I've mentioned this before, there are lots of different starter schedules out there. If you go to Pinterest and look for housekeeping schedules, you will probably find one that at least gives you the core breakdown of what can work for you. I do most heavy cleaning on Mondays, scrubbing down bathrooms, scrubbing down shower stalls, cleaning the litter box, heavy cleaning of the litter box, not just like scoop the poop real fast, go. Mopping floors, heavy dusting. I do wet dusting once a week with a damp cloth. I wipe down all surfaces and stuff. I do that on Mondays. So the rest of my week is actually generally fairly easy. Monday just works for me to have that day. I know when I was talking to my brother about it, he tends to do a lot of that kind of stuff on Saturdays or Sundays. Tuesday tends to be light dusting, planning and organizing, bill paying. I do a lot of sitting work on Tuesdays. Wednesday tends to be a big laundry day. It just works out that way that I have a stack of multiple types of laundry to do on Wednesday. So Wednesday does tend to be a laundry day. It also is my grocery shopping day, my menu planning day. I do cook by a general menu plan. On Thursdays, I change sheets on the bed. I start anything that needs longer prep for the weekend meals. I'll start on Thursdays. If I want to have, like my wheat-free chocolate chip cookies or something for the weekend, I tend to make those on Thursdays. Friday is preparation of the next 3 days worth of food. Getting things like if I'm doing a lot of crock pot meals, I might go ahead and chop everything and have it ready to go in a container or a box, so I can just dump it in the crock pot when I'm done or ready to cook it. And all that scheduling and planning. I have my personal time routine as well. So every morning as I drink my first cup of coffee, depending on the day, will respond to comments on my YouTube channel, non-time sensitive emails. I will crochet and knit. I will kind of look at the rest of the next couple days to see if there's anything discreet I need to do. Like yesterday when I was out, I knew I needed to run by Hobby Lobby because I was asked to review their new wool yarn. I'll look and plan things like that, but I take that first cup of coffee and just enjoy it. I have 2 cups of coffee every morning. That's my enjoy it period and relax. There are some days where I have time to enjoy my second cup of coffee. Sometimes my second cup of coffee is just there to sip on while I do chores. But yeah, I keep a very scheduled morning. Come lunchtime, I give myself about an hour for lunch, and I prep my food, eat my food. I can crochet if I want to. I can shut my eyes for 15 seconds if I want to. Generally around 4 o'clock, I have already prepped dinner for the night, or even started it and had it mostly done by that point. So I give myself 30 minutes to just kind of unwind, pattern search, work on a project, things like that. But I build in me time to all of these points in my schedule. And that me time is another place where I can pick up a project and just kind of work on it in these little, anywhere from 5 to 15 minute increments before I transition to the next activity. So that I like having a schedule. I like having things kind of uniform. Things don't get missed that way. There's nothing worse than having a very hectic Monday and you forget to clean the litter box and come down 2 days later to scoop it out real good and go, oh crap, literally. Because then I feel guilty because my poor kitty cat's had a full litter box and I didn't realize it. I make sure the big lumps are out like Monday and Thursday, but I just kind of scoop the top the rest of the time. So yeah, and it's not hard and fast. I mean, there are weeks where Monday's not going to work for doing things. I will redistribute things across the week and hope that I get everything in, and then the next week start over from scratch. That's just what works for me. I definitely am. I do a lot better on a routine and schedule than I do if I just kind of wing it. And having those built-in moments for me time, which is generally crafting time. A while back, it's been a couple of months now, I showed where I have these bins. And one is marked lace and fingering, one is marked sport and decay, one is marked worsted, and one's marked bulky, super bulky. And somebody asked, a couple of people asked, how I managed to have so little scraps that they can fit into these containers. Many years ago, I had a scrap control problem. I made 2 twin size blankets, 1 queen size blanket, a shawl, and 2 baby blankets, I think it's 2 twins, 2 baby, queen, something like that. I mean, stupid amount of stuff. And it was all from half skeins and scrapbles. And this was at a go. I've shared with you guys my flower blanket. Should have learned my lesson when I made that one. Didn't. But about 3 years ago, I realized I had a scrap control issue. And I wasn't using them. To me, that was just waste. I could donate it or I could use it. And I decided to use it. And I made a whole bunch of rainbow stuff. I made gradient things. I did granny squares. I did granny stripes. Yeah, I did a whole bunch of stuff, purging all of these tiny scraps out. What I do now to try to corral that is, if I notice something's getting a little over full, I start working on a project. And I start working on a scrap project that it might be a legacy project that takes me 2-3 years to finish, but I start incorporating those items into a project. So if you've been with me for any length of time and remember in my last 2 months worth of videos, periodically I've been sharing my granny squares that I just decided to start doing because I had scrap balls sitting on my desk. I start trying to use those scraps as I'm making them. And I've been doing a lot of worsted weight acrylic projects of late, so that was actually starting to become a little bit of a unwieldy mess. Now, I probably only had about that many in here, but you know how scrap balls get. I also had leftover bobbins from projects, things like that thrown in there, and they needed to be used. And I was making more of these scrap balls. I mean, I would get them worked down to, I couldn't do another baby hat with them. I couldn't really do another preemie hat with them. What do I do with the last chunk? And I started making granny squares, and then I started piecing them together, and here we are. I've got 2 full strips already done of what will be 10, I think, 10 to 12 strips. Use them as you go. If you are not super big into amigurumi, where you need just a little bit of something on the regular, or there was another thing I came up with the other day where you might just need just that little bit to get you through, use them. Make scrap hats. Kalicia's Just Full Festive Shawl, once again, is a great way to use up scraps. It was actually designed to use up the 20-gram minis from an advent calendar. Find a way to incorporate them. Take all your blues together and crochet a striped hat. If you do something like Debbie's No Name Beanie, the Canadian crocheter, I'll leave the link for that. If you do something like that hat, you don't even have to start your next color in line necessarily if you're doing more than 1 or 2 rows with it, because it'll blend into the texture of those post stitches, which means you can use up the entire scrap ball and not have any waste at the end aside from what you trim from weaving in your ends. There are hats designed to use your scraps in fingering weight yarns, combining those together to give a graduated striping pattern because your scrap balls are different sizes. So you start with 2 together, and as one runs out, you add that in, and you're still continuing with yarn A, with yarn C now, and then when yarn A runs out, now you've got C and D running up, and it gives a beautiful blended, faded effect without any work. You're just using up your scrap balls. And it's a DK weight project, so it doesn't take 950 years like fingering weight projects do. So look for things that are patterns you can easily start just incorporating them into. It doesn't have to be a scrap project as we think of them, especially crocheters. We think, granny squares and motifs with a similar border. That's where our brain automatically goes, or like the granny ripples blankets that everybody's grandmother has made. That doesn't have to be how you use up your scraps. You can use them up in much more interesting ways. And right now there are so many fade patterns out there or blended patterns out there. Once again, going back to that blended fiber thing, you can use these and use these up. I did that big wrap poncho that I'm going to make the cufflinks for. That was using scraps and 1 balls. These random single balls I had in my stash that I really wasn't going to work by themselves. And they were roving style, so they couldn't be, certain items without heavy pilling and things like that. So you can incorporate a bunch together and use a solid or a more solid yarn to blend them out and not make, the color changes so jarring. You get a more watercolor, cohesive design out of them versus, granny square, hexagons, motif with white border. There are a lot of different things. And for knitters in particular, you don't realize how often you're seeing blended projects. But if you look through what people are actually making, in a lot of cases, you'll see that they're using 6 different yarns to make a DK weight hat. And they're just grabbing their scrap bin and working them up. You don't have to do stripes. You don't have to do traditional scrap projects to use them up. You can also use them to make trims. Now, if you are big into amigurumi in particular, I would not use your neutral scraps. And I would not use your primary go-to colors like that. I would save those and go to your scrap bin first before you open a new hank of yarn, or a new skein of yarn for your amigurumi. I've got a friend that does a lot of teddy bears, and she does the kind of the ones I showed you that I'd made for my grandmother, where they're knit in a strip and then sewn together. And she does a lot of shirts on those. So if it's more than 15 grams, she saves it to do, I think she said it's like 10 to 15 grams to do each bear's clothing. So that's what she saves. Now, if she's got more than that, she will come up with a small project to use up the yarn with. If she's got less than that, she puts it into a granny square or something like that. But if she's got that 15 grams, she holds on to that, and she knows that's a sweater for her next teddy bear. I mean, you do you. You look at how you use these things, and you look at how you use them, but don't frivolously just hold on to things. Now, you can donate yarn. There are lots of organizations and places that will take your scrap balls and turn them into beautiful things. Prayer Shawl Ministries, the Blocks of Hope organizations that will put them into blankets, make blocks and put them into blankets. A lot of schools will use them. So there are places you can just donate them. If you don't want them, you're not going to use them, don't keep them, because they will start bogging you down that you don't know what to do with them. You don't like looking at them, and you don't want to work with them. Get them out of your stash. Don't let them become visual clutter for you. Have a single storage thing, and just when this is full, it's time to stick it in a bag and donate it. Drop it off wherever you choose to drop it off. Just, you have one spot, and when this is full, get rid of it. Either use it or donate it. Anyway, like I said, if anything in this came off as me being smug, smarmy, know-it-all-y, I am really, really sorry. But a lot of these are things that I get asked very, very regularly. And if it's just a one-off question, I probably won't come back and do these. But if I start seeing questions like this come up over and over again, or even in watching videos, sometimes I've had people, they're putting out the general question and they're asking into the ethos over and over again, things like this. I might sit down and do another one of these and discuss my opinions on them, but these are my opinions. These are my feelings on these things, and these are the things that work for me. That's not going to be true for everybody. Not everybody is the same. So keep that in mind. Almost nothing I say as far as tips, tricks, and rules are really rules. They're tips and tricks I find work for me and work for a lot of the people that I know. When we're sitting around talking about things, friends tend to give each other advice on stuff. And a lot of these are just carryover from those conversations as well. So don't be mad. Don't, well, my schedule doesn't allow for, but I can't. That's fine. If anything in here helps you, That's wonderful. If nothing in here is useful for you, I'm sorry, but ask your questions and I'll give you my opinion on them. I just feel very awkward giving my opinion like an authority because I in no way feel like an authority on anything, really. So yeah, I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Sorry, I have a very hard time taking myself seriously too. I really don't feel like an authority on anything. I'm not very, I can't say I'm stupid because I don't think I'm an idiot or anything, but like, I feel like a jack of all trades, master of none kind of person. I jump from thing to thing. I do multiple different crafts. I generally become just proficient enough to where I can do what I want to do and then don't pursue it anymore. So I really don't feel like an authority on anything. So it is weird giving advice like I am an authority on something. I understand I have many years of experience doing these things, but many years of experience does not a master make. Because I mess up, screw up, change frequently. And anyway, I love you guys and I hope to see you real soon. Take care.